What was that like watching that back, John? It's the first time you've seen it, isn't it?
I tell you, before it, I was absolutely crippled with terror and embarrassment. It seemed such a ludicrous thing to do, but it was. Ginny Greenwood is such a brilliant job, and she was just so beautifully constructed. Apart from the fact you get that peculiar thing, you think, that's me talking, that's rather an interesting thing. I'm taken by surprise. I don't remember saying any of this.
You were quite interested.
Well, I have to say, I've always loved Melvyn's work, and you know, he's carried this amazing flag for years and years and years, and changed the face of arts television. But when you're interviewed by him, Phil, you think, my God, no wonder he's famous, because he's so good.
Yes.
I can only compare it to being interviewed by Kirsty Young on Desert Island Discs. You forget where you are. You tell him anything.
Yeah.
It was great. I mean, I thought it was really good. Really good.
No,
and a miracle of compression, because there's a lot of stuff in there. Yes.
You don't really miss anything out, and there are some interesting themes that emerge from the films. And I was wondering, Melvyn, if there, some common themes about hard work and about you've effectively done the biggest survey of the artistic process probably ever mounted. Are there some common themes that you can sort of pull out of that across the years?
Yes, and it would be rather surprising if there weren't, but if everybody says it in different ways. You know, and I did beat that the old thing about 10% inspiration, 90% perspiration. That's been going on for a very long time. But people say it differently with different emphasis, and then you look at their work and you relate to their work and how does persistence play with regard to Blackadder. But we actually saw it there. That's one of the good things about making documentaries about artists. If you can get in there, you can have two great things if you're lucky. One is to have they themselves so intent on talking about their work, because that's what it's about, that they'll tell you things that matter to them, and that's always interesting. It is always different, and yet it's always the same. It's exactly what he was saying about the universe, all these different things, but one entity. And secondly, if you're in an area where you can see it happening, then you have the added thing, like seeing Angel Blue rehearsing, or seeing Abby first rehearsing, or Joan talking about song, or seeing him working, seeing John working with that group of people saying, after 3 hours, do you think it's a good joke? I mean, I don't know how they didn't assassinate you. But actually you do see how it happens, and so it's seeing that and just enjoying it, thinking that's part of human activity in a rather... And again, you see, the whole thing is paradoxical, because it's a rarefied area, but it's a common area. It's rarefied the way these guys are working to get the joke in Blackadder, but 15 million people are watching it. And they're getting the joke right away. It takes them half a second. It takes them 3 hours to even get approval for it. And I like all that. I just like the way that if you can get it right, you can just add to human knowledge of the way this particular group of people, artists, work, because they're just like the rest of us, except they're artists. They articulate through their art. So it can work that way. And the common themes are there, but the differences are there. And that's a gobbledygook answer, but it's about...
No, that's very satisfactory. So, John, you also talked a bit about, in that piece there, about the way the sort of creative industry has changed over the years, and we sort of tend, and I feel a bit like Philip II myself, being in charge of the channel report. My name is Philip, so there we go. There's a weird little comparison there, beware.
That was deliberate.
Thank you. I mean, what do you think the state of comedy is, for example, in the UK at the moment, based on what you've kind of said?
Well, there's some pretty good stand-up going on, and that's where the hot stuff is happening in comedy. For example, there's a really interesting thing after years and years of various people banging on in a PC way about, there ought to be more women on comedy panel shows, and the producers saying, well, we can have them on, but there's 6 of them who are really good, and we can't have them on everything. And it's tokenism to have a woman on just because she's a woman, insulting to everybody and not good for the programming. And while this discussion has been going on, most notably Danny Cohen, I think by accident, making it appear to be a diktat, some very clever journalist got him to say this thing, and now it's asked her because there are far too many panel games on television and not nearly enough really good funny comics to go around. And while this debate's been rumbling on for 10 or 15 years, out in the sticks they're actually doing it. And I discovered that now, we used to say the reason there are so few women in comedy panel games is because of the intake. You know, at root in stand-up in dirty pubs playing to 8 people, you know, it's at least, it used to be 100 to 1 men to women, and then in my day it's 10 to 1. It's not anymore, it's 50-50. If you go to the really hot places where it's happening, half the young people who want to be stand-ups are women. So that's going on there because it's self-decided. That's what the people want, that's what the audiences want. And telly, as ever, is absolutely miles behind, you know, what's actually going on.
The truth is,
in the real
creativity will
world.
find a way out.
Yeah, and it will find a way around. Creativity somehow will find a way out of the train crash that is the modern television commissioning system, which is a thoroughgoing disaster.
Thank you very much. Should I applaud that as well?
No, but it's different, Phil, because you are actually a producer, you've made stuff, and you have a right to opine on things, and because you were a producer, if you and I were to talk, we would be talking peer-to-peer. And that generally is not the case. Most people come from scheduling, marketing, and car parking, and now are in charge. It is a bit like, and it's worse. Do you
want to meet the team?
No, I'm well, okay. I mean, obviously there are exceptions to every rule,
Absolutely, yes.
but the point is that if you take, there's another problem at controller level, which is frustrating. I'm, as ever, it is nothing to do with me or my personal beef. It is, my job is to analyse a situation, see where the problems are, identify them and try to help solve them. That's what I do. And the difficulty is, at producer level, they are often talking to a commissioner, who, as I said in the film, is not an expert in, you know, like most comedy commissioners, have never done 5 minutes of stand-up, they couldn't write a sitcom, they have never written a funny line, they don't know anything about it technically, but they're in the department. It's their job to decide what the people will see. When they finally got something that they like through the system, they then go to the channel controller. And the channel controller is somehow, suddenly, they never were, expected to be an expert on arts, documentaries, comedy, drama, cookery, and everything else. And they're expected to sit there 1 hour at a time, opining on ideas for programs across all these things. And it is like this. It's like you go to this person who is in charge, and she or he is expected to diagnose your illness, fix your motor car, advise on the architecture of your kitchen extension, and 1,000 other things. It's completely absurd. And nobody in the system, absolutely nobody, unless if they've got any sanity, is happy. The producers aren't talking to people that they feel understand them. The commissioners, having worked very hard, far too many emails, too many projects, too many submissions, they finally get to the meeting with the person who can sign off the money, and it's turned down. And the controllers are sitting there all day, terrified, because there's going to come a subject about which they do not understand and they do not like, and they're expected to give an opinion about it, and they can't say, I've no idea, I don't like drama, I don't understand it, please get me out.
Listen, I promise you I say that every day. No, and hopefully we buck that trend at Sky. I hope you can testify to that. Well,
Sky has a very good reputation for finding good, all is such a simple thing. All they have to do is what they used to do, is find good people at producer level and give them a chance to get it right by learning on the job. And then when you get one of those people, they become head of the department, they decide, one person decides all the comedy, and then you give it to the controller, and all the controller does is move the stuff around so it's in a nice pattern. And that's worked really, really well.
Sounds good to me as well. Thank you.
I now resign, I've shot myself. That's the last public speech.
That is the truth. Mel, sorry, I have to ask you, I'll throw it open to the floor just after this, but just because I've been watching the South Bank Show originals, and I'm so proud to have it on the channel because it is probably the ultimate archive, the ultimate arts archive. But I want to ask you sort of three things really. What's the interview you're proudest of? And these are hard questions to ask, I know, and you're going to hate this. Your worst interview, interviewee and the drunkest you've been?
Most proud of. Well, I think I'm most proud of somehow or other being able to bring in and stick with teams along the way for 36 years now, all of whom we all wanted to do the same thing. And there were differences, there were individuals, there are arguments in the cutting room, which I always go to, of course, and so on. But looking back, it didn't seem so at the time. At the time, you're just doing the next program the next week. You don't think it's going to go on for 36 years and you haven't done a program, you've done an archive. You don't think that's going to be the case. Now, looking back, I suppose I'm proud of that. It's going on, we're adding to it with you, and with the originals, we'll take stuff from that. And when we do John Lloyd as an original, probably what I'll talk about is perhaps this evening. And because that will say a lot about John Lloyd that will not be in the extract we take from the interview, for instance. So I'm proud of that team, and it is, as you know, anybody who's worked in television, it's a team, and you're just off your head if you don't listen to and work with the director, the researcher, the film editor, the cameraman. You work with all of them, and if they trust you, they pile in, and it gets better because they do. And of course, it goes this way and that and the other. But the worst thing I've done, well, quite a few.
We must embrace failure.
No, I don't think there's time. Some things I wish, it's not, You just think it could have been better. You look at it. I remember one night, we just started the South Bank show, and we were in terrible shape. We were in awful shape. And after 6 programs, we did interviews for the first half, interviews with Jermaine Greer, Beryl Bainbridge and Gerald Scarf. We talked for 20 minutes, and then we had a half-hour film. That seemed to me to be a good way to do an arts program, and it was a disaster. It was a disaster for many reasons, but the main reason it was a disaster is that we did not have the manpower to cover the territory for the first half. If we were going to do the week in the arts, we needed a much bigger team than we had. We couldn't do it. We couldn't get to enough theatres, operas, we just couldn't do it. And number one, there was such a good team. Yeah, they stayed with me for years, most of them, Nigel and people. But we couldn't do it. And so it was thin, and then it got thinner and thinner. The films were good. They were good. And after about 6 weeks, I went to Michael Grade, and I said, I'd like you to do me a real favour. I'd like to come off the air for 6 months, for 6 weeks. Just let me get off the air for 6 weeks. Because I know how to do it now. I'm not doing that first stuff. We're doing films. We're doing longer films. I've got subjects, and I just want to come off the air. And he said no. So I thought, well, I'm fucked. And so what I did, I took 2, we had 4 producers then. I took 2 of the producers, 3 of them actually, 3 of them. It was just Tony Cashmere. I said, okay, you go and do big films. We'll do a film on, and I thought this is my last season, so I'm going to go for my heroes. We'll do a film on Bergman. We'll do a film on Pinter. We'll do go and do these big films, and we will keep it going for the next 6 weeks somehow or other. We'll just keep it going. One night, Kate had we were on Saturday night in those days, which was even worse because it was supposed to be popular. And I watched, we had no material. So on Friday morning, we'd flown to Switzerland, and I did an interview with Simenon on reversal, and quite a long interview. We came back on the very last plane out of Zurich, or it was. On Saturday, we started to cut on reversal so we could put it out. And Tony had done a terrible film about Couperin, a little concert of Couperin in one of the city churches. And I watched these 2 items on my own. Later, White had gone to bed, and I just thought, Christ.
We've all been
So
there.
it wasn't, that was one of the worst ones. That was really I felt, and then we got there. It's curious what happened. Everything bucked up. We won the first pre-Italian that ITV had ever won, let alone LWT. We did the first English thing with Bergman had ever done. We did an interview with Pinto, which was so fantastically embarrassing. When he wouldn't answer any questions, and he was silent and rude, and I left all that stuff in, which was the best bit of the interview, and so we took off. But that was bad. That was bad. It's good and bad. But looking back, all you just think is you're damn lucky to work like that with the people I work with and the people we make films with. Just think, what luck.
And we can all say that when it's good, it's the best job in the world, but we've all been to those places where it can't be the worst. So I think it's probably a good idea to open it up to the floor if anyone has any questions. Did you just say your name and where you're from and all that?
Yeah, my name's
Appreciate that.
Laura Cox, I'm from the Daily Mail. First
There's
of
a
all-
switch
Sorry?
on the mic.
Oh.
Or just shout.
Oh, there should be.
Oh, it's because I'm too quiet. Great film, loved it. Thrilled that the South Bank show is back. It really does seem that Sky is the home of art now. And I wondered, Melvyn, whether you thought this is something that could ever work on something like the BBC and why. And also...
They can keep their filthy hands off. You're pitching a programme to another channel here.
Okay. I wondered what you thought of Tony Hall at the BBC and his new massive art drive.
Well, I'll tell you the problem I've got here is, and Celia, who's my immediate boss, well, immediate boss, is when you go to things to talk about Sky Arts, people want to know what you think about the BBC. And what they report is what you think about the BBC. So I got my thoughts about the BBC, which are, I'm glad they're doing lots more arts programmes. Good luck to them, and the best luck in the world to them. And we're going to give them a bloody good one for them. We already are doing in quite a big way. But I think wish the BBC all the luck in the world. The more the merrier. I'm a more the merrier bloke. I'm not going into detail. Because you report it, and you wouldn't talk about Sky Arts or the South Bank show. Which might seem selfish. Oops, you talk quietly after. Basically, I mean what I say. I wish, who doesn't wish the BBC good luck? And they've got enormous resources, enormous powers. And so good luck to them. Get on with it. Do more. Fine.
But why has Sky become, why is Sky the home of arts? Why has it done so well?
Because these guys mean it. I can answer that. I mean, their drive is there. And I wasn't mouthing. As I said, believe it or not. And believe it or not. I didn't go creeping. They came from the top. And I mean from the top. I mean, you go to... Anyway, I'm not going to compare it with anything else. But Jeremy DeRock, Stuart, Phil, Celia, right the way down, they want to do this. And of course, that doesn't mean they say yes to everything by a long way. But we've come up with some good ideas, frankly. South Bank show is still strong. Look at the South Bank show on John. And the South Bank show we've done with other people in this room, Abby and Angel and so on. They're strong programs, very, I think, strong arts documentaries. I think this originals might turn out to be pretty good. We'll have to wait and see. You need a bit of this, that and the other, but they're on their way. And then the masterclasses are, well, they're on their way. Jones here is one of the masterclass people. And so we went with pretty good ideas. But what you get is backing. And it's not massive budgeting. It's not, they are out budgeting other people, not in my experience. It's you get enough to do the job. I don't know. I think if you want to know why Sky are doing it, Phil's better to ask than I am.
I think it's very simple. I mean, we have two dedicated arts channels. We play arts programming 48 hours a day, effectively. And, you know, we not only do we love it and want to get as much of that stuff out there as possible, our customers love it as well. And so, you know, there's a sort of proven appetite for this kind of content out there. Frankly, we wouldn't do it if that wasn't the case. And as Melvyn was saying, that Sky identified the love of football that everybody has. There's a similar thing happening in the arts world. And I go often to the kind of Royal Academy lates or the Science Museum lates. These places are full of young people on dates, you know, kids, older people. When we show things like Leonardo live and pump it into cinemas and simulcast it on Sky Arts, the cinemas sell out. The National Theatre do it now. The cinemas sell out. There's just a huge appetite for that sort of stuff out there, and we've identified it. We love it too. And that's kind of, isn't much more complicated than that in a way. It's stuff we love. Okay, next question.
Got a couple of questions for, thanks. Vanessa Thorpe from The Observer. A couple of questions for John. You rightly say what a sensitive interviewer Melvyn is, but you also got some, you came back the other way a couple of times and you got some interesting things from your interviewer. what do you think, is my question, has made you good with people and with talent, whether it's Douglas Adams or Peter Cook or whoever down the years, or Rowan? And secondly, do you think that TV take comedy seriously enough at the moment?
It's very difficult to. It is a very odd thing watching yourself at such length, because it's quite revelatory, really, because you don't really know how you come across when you're looking out at the world. And I can only really say what I try to do. And I once heard, it was incredibly touching for me to watch Rowan and Stephen be so, I would say nice, but it's more than that, isn't it? I mean, they really meant it, didn't they? Didn't you have a sense that they've been, it's quite shocking. This is not somebody doing the normal kind of, oh yes, what a marvellous fellow, so sorry he's dead kind of thing. But it's kind of, it's really thought through. I mean, particularly Rowan, who's very, everybody knows how clever Stephen is. Not so many people, it's not so obvious how intelligent Rowan is. A very thoughtful person, thinks about everything very hard. And Rowan once said about me, which is something I really am proud of, because Buckminster Fuller, the inventor of the geodesic dome and any other wonderful achievements, once said, the only thing that really matters is integrity. That's, to live with integrity is the most important thing, and that's what I try to do. Quite what that means, I'm not sure, but to be truthful, to mind about things, to, you know, I'm in the service of something bigger than me. It's not about me, it's not about my ego. I'm really trying to help these people to be better. And of course, as Melvyn said, so am I not an auteur of any sort. It's the team that makes the programme, and I am simply a bloke. I often say it's like a trireme setting out, you know, into the Aegean, and all these people heaving away and rowing, you know, and all this sort of thing. The amazing person who designed the boat, the incredible muscle power and intelligence, and the steersman who's very intelligent. I'm just the bloke beating the drum on the back to make sure they beat in time. It's sort of like that, really. Sorry, long answer. What was the second question? I'm sure it's more interesting.
Do you think TV is taking comedy seriously enough
No, comedy is a disaster in television, absolutely thoroughgoing disaster. It's more acute in comedy than in almost anything else, because so few people know how to do it. It's a very, I mean, any actor will tell you comedy is the most difficult thing to do. I don't, it's not for me, because it's what I do. It's a bit like saying a brain surgeon is the most difficult thing. To a brain surgeon is what they do. They don't know anything else. I've done that for 40 years. And I've watched people do it. There are hardly any producers in the country who really know how to consistently produce comedy. There's a couple of them sadly are dead. Harry Thompson and Geoffrey Perkins were just two. John Plowman is an absolute genius. Almost everything John Plowman has ever done, from W1A through Ad Fab and 1,000 other things, is brilliant. He can be trusted. John Plowman should not have to argue or pitch to anybody. People should going to Plowman on their knees saying, John, what would you like to do next, and how soon can we have it, and how much money would you like? He is a man of great integrity and honour and great talent, but no, he's treated like any wanker who's been phoned in from Middlesbrough saying, I've got 3,000 hits on YouTube and animation. I'd like an interview, please. It's all gone completely bent out of shape. And the thing is, it's also because television very largely is run by people who've come up the news way, because they're very well organised and they're, so-called, they're diligent. And a news person does not understand the process of creativity. I'm sorry, but they don't. You do not want in news anyone creative. They'd be lying, wouldn't they? Essentially, a newsman, however good they are, is simply reporting the truth as they see it. They are not required to have ideas. And the rest of us in drama and any kind of arts and comedy in particular, that's not what we do. We do a different thing. It is like Martians and Venusians talking to each other. There's no point in having that conversation. I'm sorry, but I feel it's about time somebody says it, but I am speaking for you know, tens, possibly even hundreds of thousands of people who work in the business, most of whom are too frightened to say anything because their job depends on it. It's very important it's said, it's very important it's changed, because, you know, as I'm sure what Melvyn said at the beginning, television to this country, you know, used to be world-beating, incredibly important. It's part of who we are, it's part of how we think. We used to be brilliant at it, by far and away the best in the world. Same is true of advertising. We aren't anymore.
Except in certain areas.
We are, they're always great things. We've lost that knack, which I used to be given the opportunity to do, is, you know, Blackadder was put out on BBC One at peak time, you know, even though it was a mess, the first series. They stuck with it, they fired us, they cancelled Michael Graves, same guy, cancelled the first series, said it's too expensive for the ratings, so we went away, we rewrote the whole thing to have no film, no horses, no dogs, no castles in it at all, all set in one room. And he said, okay, all right, if it's cheap, you can have another go, and we got it right. And we used to be allowed to do that, and now it has to be premiered on BBC Three, which will now be online, and nobody will see it. And I do think, especially at the BBC, is that if the BBC is doing its news properly, its comedy properly, they don't have to worry about anything else. And that is what will sink. What will sink the corporation is nothing to do with, you know, do people trust it? Is the license fee too much? Nobody gives us 2 pennyworth about the license fee. Not really. It's tiny. It's 30 pence a day. It's nothing at all. But they really care if the comedy isn't funny. Then they just won't go there anymore, and that is what will sink it. And that would be even those people who write articles about how the BBC must go, and it's a poll tax, and it's disgusting, and everybody's a paedophile or a communist. People who write those articles, and there are quite a few of them, will be jolly sorry when there is no BBC anymore. I'm personally going to leave the country.
Next question. Oh, the gentleman over there.
Thank you. Adam Sherwood from The Independent. People are always saying we'd like another Blackadder series, we'd like to see Spitting Image come back. Do you think that actually it's going to be very difficult to try and replicate the genius of those programs by going back and trying to revive them? Can it actually be done and get the same people together? Could it actually be a success, especially with the Director General of the BBC who's come from a news background?
Yes. Either of those programs could be a success immediately if people were prepared to accept the terms. In the case of Spitting Image, you'd have to have £5 million up front to rebuild the studio and get at least 300 or 400 puppets to start. Everybody wants Spitting Image back on air. They all want the 15 million ratings that it regularly delivered, and they all want the laughs, and even the politicians think it's a good thing. I was having a drink on the House of Commons terrace, and they're all going on about it, how wonderful it was. Because as Simon Hoggart used to famously say, I used to say to Simon, how did you get away with your columns? You're so rude about the MPs. How did they let you into the lobby? He said, well, the great thing about House of Commons is you make one enemy, you make 100 friends. I suppose it is a bit like that. It's universally popular. It's very hard to find somebody who didn't like it. But you can't get it for nothing. You've got to pay for it. It costs a lot of money. And then when it's on air, you've got to do what wonderful Charlie Denton, our controller, did. Backed us every step of the way. Every attack by the Sun or the Birmingham Mercury, every attack by Robert Maxwell, who was on the board and tried to get his puppet taken out of the show. He stood up to us. He stood up to the middle management, wouldn't let us have a Quantel machine. He went on sticking up for us, even when everyone was saying it was a pile of poo and it should be taken off the air. And now you look back and everybody says John Lloyd's a genius. It's nothing to do with that. It's just to do with the whole system was in going to one end, which is to try to do marvellous television, which we sometimes did. And the same with Blackadder. I'm not going to mention who it was, which particular controller commissioner pair rang me up and said, John, you're a genius, we'd like to do the new Blackadder. I said, great, okay, so we went and had a drink, and they said, so what are your ideas? I said, I don't know, just called me up. I haven't had an idea yet. I'll go away and think about it. What are you going to do? Give me a commission? I said, no. You've got to tell us your ideas, and then we'll tell you what we think of them. And I said, hang on, I thought I was a comedy genius. Don't you trust my ideas? No, we need to, obviously, a chance to see what your ideas are. Black adder, that's a bit dark, isn't it? Grey adder, grey snake, white snake. That's what it should be called. We think it should be called white snake, and it shouldn't be history. People don't really like history. It's more baking. So it's called white snake, and it's about not baking, well, because baking's a bit being done frying. It's about frying. It's a panel game about frying called White Snake with Stephen Fry in it. So, but I wanted to do a sitcom with some new people you've never heard of. No, I think we're the commissioners, and that's what we want. Thank you very much. If you don't want it, we'll go and get somebody else to do it. And that is honestly the way it works, really. I'm very sorry for people here who are commissioners, but I wanted to talk a bit about W1A. I called Plowman because he's an old, very, very old friend, and friend of Richard Curtis. I called Plowman to say how brilliant W1A was and how painful it is to see something so appallingly truthful, not just about the BBC, but about television in general, and so painfully funny as well. So you're laughing aloud at Yentov and Salman Rushdie arm wrestling, and yet it's so embarrassing you want to cry. And I said to the people at the corporation must be so ashamed, they must watch this and say, oh my God, I'm so ashamed, they're getting at me. And he says, no, not one of them. Oh. I know a woman just like that. And so, you know, as Jonathan Swift said, you know, satire is a glass wherein people do recognise everyone their own image.
So is there a Blackadder potentially at all?
No.
We have just commissioned White Snake.
White bait. No, because, but actually, I think, to be honest, we should leave it there. Because it's very difficult to top where it was. And I see, for example, there's been a Dad's Army script floating around for a movie for years. I might go, and it's well cast. You know, they've got Toby Jones and as Captain Mannering and Bill Nighy as Wilson, which is fine, but for Christ's sake, you know, there's a whole universe out there. Do we have to, does everything have to be a retread of something else? They're bringing back the Generation Game. Oh, what an exciting what a marvellous, oh, and somebody said, and here's the brilliant thing, it'll be a woman presenting it. That's fabulous. What an exciting moment. Have you seen that thing with Rob Brydon on Saturday night?
Yes.
I mean, what a disgrace, honestly. You know, Rob is working his socks off to do the most appalling half-cock bit of this, is a bit of Celebrity Squares and a bit of something else. It is such a waste of space, isn't it? It's really, I mean, Rob is brilliant, I think, but really, I'd rather just see Rob, quite honestly.
Can I just
I'll get you, coach, shall I?
I'm really intrigued by White Snake, and we'll talk about it. I just want to ask you, is there are there people still on your wish list? I mean, there must be, because obviously we're going to be doing more series, so I certainly hope there are. But is there that person you really must?
Yeah, one or two. I mean, we don't work much more than about a year ahead. And we've got 3 people who couldn't do it this year who are really terrific people to make films. Nobody's made films about them. They're really in the middle of the culture. And with a bit of luck, it'll be good to do them next time round if it still works for them and for us. It isn't much of a heartbreak if people say no, really, because there's so many. I mean, and they keep coming up. I mean, for instance, in this new series, two of our subjects, Angel Blue and Danny Radcliffe, weren't born when the South Bank show started. And Abby was just struggling there. I mean, and then Joan, so they just keep coming up. They keep coming up. I mean, I said about this in hastily and almost peremptory remarks at the beginning. They're there. They're teeming around if you look and you find for them. There's fine young novelists and young poets, and they're all there. I know that we've got a good team. We survey them and we just take that. So we've got plans for next season, and we'll follow up those 2 or 3 people. But then if that doesn't happen, we'll follow up 3 or 4 other people. And when we started this time last year, say, 6 is hard to do. it's like, you know, to make a short speech, as Lloyd George said, you know, it's 400 people an hour, I'll start now. If you want me to speak for 5 minutes, I'll need a week to write it. And to make 20 programmes for the South Bank Church in the old days, you could do, there's a bit, I'm rather glad of the tightness, really. Back into your mind, we look at these 6, it's like a Rubik Cube, they've all been worked out before we've got started work on them. And we'll get there again next time. We've done it, this is the 3rd season we've done it. I've looked at each time, there's 6, and I think, yeah, we're covering that. We've got top people there. We've got fresh people there. This is good. This is a set. This will go into the archive. We can use it again.
Got time for another question? Yeah. It's important to keep curious, isn't it? And
Yeah.
something that characterises both of you.
Hi, Olivia Cole from The Spectator. Just one more question on Blackadder. I remember years ago studying the First World War and the final episode being shown in history. Michael Gove recently, I think, said that the programme was part of a sort of left-wing historian, history teacher, grand conspiracy, and I wondered if, looking back, you see it as having any kind of political bias, and also how you feel about it being used in history classes.
Well, I just want to disabuse the Education Secretary of the idea that that is a documentary. Those people laughing, you can tell that it's actually a different kind of thing. And I want to assure him that I can categorically state, for example, that in the 2nd series, Queen Elizabeth I of England did not have a female nanny called Bernard, and so forth. If anything, obviously Blackadder is an apolitical thing. We wouldn't have even called it a satire. It's a sitcom. It is a situation comedy. There are people set in a situation where the rules of sitcom generally is they're trapped, they can't get out, whether it's Porridge is about prison, Dad's Army is about a platoon of Home Guard in the Second World War, and some generally Steptoe and Son is about a dysfunctional father-son relationship. The best sitcoms nearly always have a tragic or sad or meaningful edge, because comedy, like good documentary or good arts programs, is trying to get at a kind of truth. I thought it was a horrific idea to set it in the First World War, and so did Ben Elton's uncle, G.R. Elton, very famous Tudor historian. But as we started to think about it, we realised it's actually an extraordinary setting, and it's a simple setting, you know. And if anything, if there is any political basis for it, Michael goes barking completely up the wrong tree, because if anything, the central cliche, if you like, the comic cliche of Blackadder Goes Forth is based on Alan Clark's book, Lions Led by Donkeys, which is he is one of the most right-wing historians, you know, Kenneth Clark's son, right-wing historian. It was him who basically came up with this thing. The idea is politically, my great-uncle was a general in the tank corps in the First World War, so you know, I feel a connection with it. There was no attempt to be political. And the idea that Blackadder should not be taught in schools is completely feeble, frankly. It's a long time ago since Michael Gove said that he's quite wrong about it. And of course, no teacher sets out to show a piece of Blackadder and says, this is the way it was here, as we can see. This is as we can see, and then having seen this, we should all vote Labour. This idea, so I just go back to the BBC for a minute, the idea that the BBC is a left-wing conspiracy, I want to know why the Labour government doesn't keep getting elected. If it's so powerful, all this, you know, powerful left-wing conspiracy. And in any case, whatever most of us vote, we don't bring it to work when we're making telly. So it's certainly not political. I do feel strongly about Blackadder. Blackadder is shown all over the country in schools all the time. It's a brilliant teaching tool because it gets kids laughing and watching and paying attention. And then, of course, every teacher in the country says, well, what do you think? Do you think it was really like that? Did they wear those ridiculous rough things? Yes, they did. Here's a picture of people wearing ruffs. And one of the most accurate things about Blackadder is the costume design. The costume designers, all of them, are fantastic. team of people. They're extremely accurate. And the other stuff is, do you think, you know, that there were people like Baldrick, and, you know, were there people like General Melchett? Yes, there were, actually. And there were people like Captain George. There were people who, you know, had this overrated, over-exaggerated patriotism, and there were saints like Blackadder. If you look at, I honestly wonder whether the Secretary of State has watched the programme at all, because the whole gamut of all the possible opinions, apart from the only character who's not there is the conscientious objector, which is the only really left-wing thing you could have said, which is there were people who wouldn't fight because they were against it politically. And when you look at the end, I don't know another more classically British and patriotic scene in a bit when they finally all do their duty and they go to what we must assume is all their deaths. And I mentioned Michael Gove the other day, and I was doing the Chipping Norton Literary Festival, and I said that thing about it's not a documentary. I mentioned the word Michael Gove, and the whole audience started to boo. This is Chipping Norton. Chipping Norton set. He hit the wrong target. Poor Mr. Gove. You know, the idea that Blackadder is some sort of propaganda weapon is really bad.